to all the participants. And yesterday we had a very good session. There I have talked about whatever has been covered so far, and briefly we had reached the point of relationship. Okay, and when I talk about the relationship, quite often people say, that the main problem in relationship is expectation. However, what the proposal here is that there is no relationship without expectation. So actually speaking, a relationship exists because we expect something from each other. Like you expect something from your kid, okay? You expect something from your husband, from your wife, from your parents, from your friends, from your brother, sister. So then why do we say that expectation is problem? So it is not problem, is not of expectation, but since we fail to fulfill these expectations, that is the biggest problem. So in relationship, problem is not of expectation, but the problem is that we don't understand the expectations. We fail to understand what is right expectation, what is wrong expectation, and even if we understand the right expectation, we do not know how to fulfill that expectation, or we are not yet in a position to be able to fulfill those expectations. So that is the biggest challenge. Okay. Now next question comes, is it possible to fulfill expectations in the relationship? And answer is yes, it is possible. So if we can fulfill relationship expectations, the next question, which is quite logical, what are the expectations in the relationship? After all, what is it that is expected? Or are the expectations are different in each relationship? And the question is, there are two types of expectations in any relationship. Okay, one type of the expectation is related to the material, and another expectation is related with the emotion. So as you might have, this was discussed, must have been discussed earlier, that what are two different kind of needs which human beings have.
Ajay
And
sir, your mic is slightly away from your mouth.
okay, so the voice is very
Now,
clear.
now it,
Now it is clear.
yes.
So when we say that there are two types of needs, since these are human needs, a relationship is between human to humans, both these needs gets manifested. Okay, so in any relationship you have material needs and you have psychological needs. Like for example, a relationship with a kid. Okay, so there are certain expectations from kids towards their parents. Similarly, there are certain expectations of parents from the kids. So that's why all relationships have mutual expectations. And good thing is that all these mutual expectations are complementary to each other. They are not in conflict. And material needs can vary from one relationship to another relationship, and in the same relationship with age and time and situation. However, the psychological expectations are the same. Okay, and that's why, like, we'll come to a specific example while we'll be discussing this. But what are the expectations? So expectations are two types. Okay, material as well as emotional or psychological, and both of these to be understood and to be met, and it is possible to meet them. For example, how many of you expect money or material or gift in relationship? For example, in husband-wife relationship, do you need money or respect or care? Or in brother-sister relationship, do you expect money or affection? Now, as I said, both are needed from time to time. Okay, the good thing is that the overriding between the two is always a psychological need. Money or the material or the gifts are symbolic, representative of that or manifestation of that affection, respect, caring, so this is a manifestation and this may change. For example, now coming to a very specific example of a parent or a teacher with their kids and students. Now, let us take first example between parent and kids. Most of you might be having kids at home. What is it that as a parent you expect from kids? I would say that please do write it down on a piece of paper. Write the relationship as a parent. What is it that you expect from kids? And you have been a kid also. So also write down as a kid or even now as a grown up, what is it that you expect from your parents? So I'll give you around 30 seconds. You have to draw two columns, parent and kid. Write your expectation as a parent. Also write your expectation as a kid. You can share it on the messenger and I will get it while we'll take a break. But right now I'll continue and put up my point of view. Then we'll see during Q&A session. Now, as a parent, the expectation from the kids is of gratitude. You expect them while they become grown up that they show gratitude. So this is a psychological part. Gratitude towards whatever help or support or guidance as a parent you have been able to give to your kids. And what kids are expecting? They are expecting from parents that parents will be able to guide them in the right direction and they will also support them till the time they become in a position where they can support themselves for their physical needs. So they expect that you would be nurturing, providing them good amount of and nutritious food and guiding them in their studies or supporting them in their studies. Now, can we deliver that? The answer is yes. We can always deliver. Psychological need delivery, there is no issue. What about physical need? Now the good thing is that kids expect from their parents what parents can provide them. Now this is very beautiful in the relationship. For example, your good kid will not ask for Mercedes, or if he has asked, then he knows that their parents can provide that. Or kid may ask for a two-wheeler or for a car or for a cycle. So a son of a auto wala may ask for a cycle or a two-wheeler. Your kids may ask for a car or a high-end two-wheeler. So or someone's kid, for example, Ambani's kid can ask for Mercedes or a more expensive gift. So because in the relationship we know what can be delivered, what in the relationship can be expected and what can be fulfilled. So as far as the psychological need is concerned, there is no difference between a kid of an auto wala or our kids or a kid of a prime minister or an IAS officer or a big businessman. There is the same expectation of providing care, nurturing them physically as well as mentally, And similarly, the parents have the similar expectation from their kids. Does not matter what class they belong to, which business they belong to, which country they belong to. They expect in return the gratitude and affection from their kids. So I just looked at one relationship. Similarly, you can have the relationship teacher and student. Okay, what is it that as a teacher you expect from students? And similarly, what is it a student is expecting from teachers? There too, you would find a similar complementary, mutually supportive expectations. There's a symbiotic relationship if we understand it correctly. And again, a student is looking from teachers. So from a student point of view, they are expecting that the teacher would be proficient in their subject and will teach students in a manner where he can understand it and will do it or guide the students in a nurturing way. Similarly, as a teacher, you expect them to be obedient. You expect them to be, full of gratitude towards this kind of support or guidance you have provided. And these are totally mutually exclusive set. And this is possible to fulfill. Now comes how many types of relationships are there? Again, I would like you to please jot down on a piece of paper. We have already discussed now 2 relationships. Parents and kids, teachers and students. I would encourage you to please note down what are the other kind of relationships we have. And please give your response on the messenger. Now, I'll hold for 30 seconds here. Please do jot down a different kind of relationships. Okay, good. Now, another question which comes, because it looks like as if we Indians are quite, possessive about relationships. So is it unique to Indians or is it a universal phenomenon? And I will tell you the relationship which you might have written, and if something is missed, you will please point out. So I have talked about parent and child relationship. I have talked about student and teacher relationship. There's a husband and wife relationship. There's a friends relationship. There are brothers and sisters relationship. And there is a relationship with, while we go into industry, work around, so a more skillful person teaching a guy who is novice, or so to say, a trained and a trainee person relationship, like we all do internship while as an engineers or doctors or CA or any someone has to learn carpentry, repair of maintenance of two-wheeler, or as a teacher, So what happens? There's a relationship where someone who is an expert teaching someone who is a trainee. So that is another relationship. And there are relationships in the systems, like you are in a college. There is a relationship. Someone is playing a role of a director, someone is a principal, someone is a professor. So relationship, systemic relationships. So these are 7 kind of relationships which are there, and these are not specific to India. They are found in America, Japan, China. There is also parent and child, teachers and students, trainee and trained, husband and wife, friends, brothers, sisters. So there's nothing uniqueness. In fact, there's a universality, and that's why we say it is universal human values. So these values which are manifested in relationships are universal. The psychological part of it. The material part will change as per our capacity. So that's how. Now, Coming back to human conduct, which was sort of left out earlier, I mean, in yesterday's session, and then we will cover today's session's topic, which is, a harmony within existence and nature. Now, when we say human conduct, as someone has asked yesterday, that is there a universality of human conduct? Answer is yes. Human conduct has got three dimensions, values, character, and morality. Values is something which is manifested in relationships. So when I have talked about these values, in relationships like a parent and a kid, teacher and a student, I have mentioned a few values, gratitude, affection, trust, guidance, caring. Similarly, character is something which is manifested in society. And when I say it is manifested in society, the family is inbuilt in it. In relationship, it is inbuilt. So in relationship means it is in family, mainly broadly in family, and character is manifested in society in the form of the right way of earning, and morality is something which is manifested in systems while we are working in governments, while we are working in organizations, while we are working in industry. And so the morality, which is basically a right utilization of the position in which we are in, or the society has entrusted us with that position. Someone is director, IAS officer, IPS officer, or as a doctor, as a teacher. Society has given us a role to train others to be a teacher. So morality is the rightful utilization of that resource which has been bestowed upon us by the society. So morality is manifested in that. So, and all these three put together, values, character, and morality, they define a human conduct. Now coming about values, when people say, what do you mean by values? Value, the meaning of value is what is valuable to us? How do I value someone? So what value we place to say money or material versus how do we value relationships, and how do we value knowledge? What is the value of relationship in any relationship which we discussed? There are two parts. One is the defining part in that is the feeling, which is universal, which does not change with time, with person, with situation. And the other part, so those feelings or emotions is, as I mentioned, some of them: gratitude, respect, trust, affection, reverence, care, love. And money and material is necessary, but not sufficient condition to fulfill relationship. Like after an age, when my kid becomes grown up, say 25 years of age, and he starts earning, then as a father, as a parent, now my need of giving him some material, as I was to take care of him in studies, providing fees, providing money for his food, that is almost over. But in the part of gratitude, respect, trust, affection, caring, this continues. So this remains universal. This does not change with time. But the money and material will keep on changing, but it is necessary. So we are not saying, as someone is asking, this is saying that we have to become monk. No. So money and material is necessary, but not the sufficient condition to fulfill the relationships. This we have. Yeah, this we have talked. Now, what is character? Character is one of the part of character is being economically independent after an age, which means creating wealth which is required to fulfill these relationships. However, only caveat is following natural laws. So whatever is the cyclic natural laws are available, we need to create wealth not by at the expense of, you know, not following natural laws. For example, while we create lot of material and we create pollution, now that is, you know, not following the natural laws, and that's what creates issues. So here, when we say becoming economically independent is a part of character. After an age, every parents wants their kids to be able to generate wealth or to be able to fulfill their own needs. Not only parents wants it, the nation as a whole wants. That's why we have employment, unemployment issues, and government does not want people to remain unemployed after an age, because they should be able to support the economic system and become independent. Only thing is that we should be able to follow the cyclicity of nature, the cyclic system, so that we do not create environmental issues while we are trying to fulfill our physical needs. Another part of character is valuing the husband-wife relationship. We call it Swanari Swapros, the rightfully whatever in the society, what is we have accepted each other as a husband and wife. Because this is the backbone of family. Without this, a family institution of family gets endangered. And if the institute of family gets endangered, then there becomes a problem, because the growth of the new generation, the progeny which is going to come, the kids, we will not be able to support them, we will not be able to guide them, we will not be able to take care of their bodily as well as of their psychological needs. This is the biggest casualty in any problem which happens between husband and wife, or it results into divorce, or not even divorce. In Indian scenario, for example, they may be living under the same roof, but if they are not aligned, there is a lot of quarreling between them. Okay, their views are not matching with each other, they are not working with the same goal of humanity, then there are problems. So the husband-wife relationship is not only it is a backbone of family, since family is the backbone of society. So basically this relationship is a backbone of society. And the third thing is required as a part of character is kindness and behavior, where we are willing to support others, those who are not as capable as we may be. And so what is the meaning of kindness? Is not that giving money to them, but empowering them. Okay, making them learn skills. So as they say, let's not distribute fish, but teach fishing. So kindness basically means teaching fishing, means making them, and you teachers are already in that position where you are supposed to make our students skillful so that they can earn their own livelihood, and bestow them with the knowledge of natural laws, so they do not compromise on that. So they should not be making, say if someone is doing opening up industry and they are not putting their effluent into a river, or the flue gases into air without filtering them. So if they follow the natural laws, similarly, if there are farmers, and they are doing pesticides, insecticide, they are destroying the soil fertility. And if we are teaching agricultural engineering, for example, we are supposed to let our students become aware about these issues. And not only awareness is, I would say, is not sufficient, but we need to create that kind of culture in the society. And I like this example very much. The example of, for example, we are teaching the similar laws of transportation in India, and the similar laws are taught in Singapore, because laws are very simple. The rules are very simple. You should cross the road on zebra lines, or you should stop your vehicle while there is a red light, only cross it when there is a green light, or you should follow rules like if it is a no horn zone, you should not honk it, or you should respect the pedestrian and let them pass. However, the similar laws, if you look at the books of Singaporean or if you look at the Indian books, the same rules are being taught at both the places. However, when an Indian person is taking their kid, for example, on the road, and he crosses a red light, the small kid asks his father, "Dad, what are you doing? See, there's a red light." And dad says, "Beta sab chalta hai." Or even if there are parents amongst this group who will not cross probably red light and they stop, but then the son or the kid sees that there are others, those who are crossing the road without any respect to the red light. And so he gets confused that what is happening. Whatever is being taught, the elders don't seems to be following that. If you look at the same case, a father is taking his son in Singapore and say it's midnight and father stops on red light and son asks father, "Father, why have you stopped? There's no one coming here. The whole the road is empty." Then he says, "No, no, beta, since there's a red light, so I am stopping. I have stopped the car or two-wheeler." Now that is culture, because that then it gets ingrained. So it is not only that we teach our students that we should not create pollution or we should not have polluting industry, but if he sees that everyone else is behaving like that, it becomes difficult for him to follow such rules. However, we have to make a beginning. So true that. So what I'm saying is we have to do both. We as a teacher have a responsibility as a parent also to have these values we ourselves must follow. That's why we say we can only give what we have. So if we don't follow ourselves and we only teach, simply teaching is not going to result into the kind of behavior which we expect. So both things are required. I think I'll take a short pause here and ask our Yogesh Bhai if there are any queries related to this so far what we have discussed. Yogesh Bhai?
Yes, I'm going to the same. There is no question till now.
Oh, excellent. So either my talk has been too good that there are no or people are not really putting it onto the messenger. Okay, so I will continue. How many participants are there? Somehow in this particular software, I am yet not got accustomed to being able to see their faces or the number of participants. So how many are there, Yogesh Bhai?
Around 400.
Pardon? Hello?
Yes, around 400.
Around 4. So it's a good number. Okay. So I would urge people to please don't hesitate to put your query on the messenger. Now coming to the human goal, we had that topic. I think most of it must have been discussed so far, and it must have been told, that happiness is the goal we are pursuing. Behind every activity, whatever we are doing, and this must have been asked probably for sure, that do we need happiness only Sunday to Sunday? Will it be okay? Every day, 2 hours, that suffice? Or we are looking for happiness, 24/7. And before we go to the conclusion immediately, no, 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 sir, this is not possible. I would say pause for a while and look at from this, look at this question. Forget about whether it is possible or not. Rather, you look at it, is it desirable? Do you want it to happen or not? And you will find that this is what you desire. Some people are not sure, do they really need happiness for all the time? And then I put a counter question. Sometimes you have to ask the question in a reverse order. How many of you want to be unhappy for half an hour a day, 10 minutes a day? And then you realize that you don't want to be unhappy in a moment. And then you put the question again. It means that you want happiness all the time, because if you don't want to be unhappy, you don't plan even a small activity for 5 to 10 minutes in a day where you write on a piece of paper pen. Some people have, habit of tick marking their activities. Okay, I have to read 10 pages, I have to take this class. You don't plan an activity, I have to, for half an hour to be unhappy. And 10 to 10:30, go to someone whom I don't like to meet, and so that I'll feel sad about it. So it means you're not planning for an happiness. So it means the desire is to be happy all the time. Now look at this possibility. Something that is desired by all must be possible. Otherwise, the existence seems to be a cruel design, because there is something which is desired by all, a continuity of happiness, and at the same time we feel, no, it is not possible. And why such a desire? So it means we are missing some rules. If something is desired by everyone, that must be possible. Only thing is we don't know how to make it possible. So happiness is the goal of human beings. Okay? Money, material, positions, etc. are the means. They are not the goal. Sometimes we fail to see between the means and the goals. Okay, and we feel as if, because I give this exercise to almost all my participants, that please make 3 to 5 calls today to your friends, family members. Ask them, what is it that they want in life? And the answer you will get, someone will say, I need, if I get 5 crore rupees, my life will be great. If I can buy that house in this locality, a 4 BHK or a bungalow, or if I get promoted, this year, or if my son gets married or gets a job. So what I'm saying is, if you are asking them what is it that they are looking for, no one will say happiness. Very few may say happiness. They will say, I need money, I need this position, my son will get this or that. But then if you ask another probing question, why do you want to get so much of money? Why do you want to buy that house? Or why do you want your son to get married or to get a job? Then second or third why, in engineering, there's a 5 why analysis, where you can ask, 5 times why, and you will get to the core of the issue. So they call it a 5 why analysis. So if you ask, similarly here, if you third or fourth trial, you ask yourself, why do you want to get promoted? And then your answer will come, no, this will make me happy. This will bring me respect, and which basically will make me happy. So finally, happiness is the goal. However, we get stuck into the means rather than the goal. So means may be varying, but the goal is happiness. And you, as you might have gone through the needs, discussion, these money, material positions are mistaken. They miserably fail to meet this goal of happiness, because money, material, and position at best can provide temporary happiness, and we are seeking permanence, continuity, of happiness 24 hours. So this miserably fails, and So we need to understand then how it comes, and this must have been discussed. As I said, it comes through relationship, these values, and at the root of it, it comes through knowledge, because through knowledge only I myself get become, I become full of values. I have respect for myself and for others. I develop trust for myself and for others. I have affection. I have gratitude, these virtues, and that's why knowledge is so important. This makes person a virtuous. When I say happiness, some people in offline workshop do correct me. Certainly, I'm looking for peace of mind. I'm looking for contentment, not happiness. So here, when I define happiness, when I use the word happiness, I am including all these four dimensions into it: happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss. And what is happiness? This is very important question. So I would hold for 30 seconds here, and I would like you to write down what does it mean to you when a word happiness comes. How do you define happiness for yourself? Or if I put it differently, when do you become sad or unhappy? What causes you unhappiness? Okay. So what I'm saying is quite often people come up, sir, external situations makes me happy or unhappy. Quite often, because we fail to see inner connection. What I'm saying is it is the inner harmony that creates happiness, or it is the inner conflict that is the cause of unhappiness, not the outside circumstances. Because had it been outside circumstances, then happiness and unhappiness is beyond you. You will never be in control. And you can see yourself. For example, you enter your home, you are very happy due to whatever reasons today. You feel good about it. And a son breaks a glass. And you say, doesn't matter. You say to your kid, बेटा कभी कभी ऐसा हो जाता है, don't worry, nothing, it's okay, take care next time, because you are happy. So the same situation has not caused, however, on some other day, if he would have made even a slight lesser mistake than breaking the glass, you would have been quite irritated. So what I'm saying is it is not a situation. So you yourself can see in yours that the same circumstances are not creating the same kind of response in you as well as in others. Like for example, it's a very famous example of Mahatma Gandhi, that while he was riding a train and his one of the sleepers slipped and train started before he could get down and pick up, and he immediately threw the other one out of the compartment. And someone asked him, why are you throwing the other one? He said, at least whosoever gets it will get the pair of sleepers so that he can use it. Now, it's a different response altogether, rather than feeling sad or bad about it. So what I'm saying is it is not the situations which creating happiness and happiness. It is the intellectual clarity. It is the inner harmony. That's why knowledge is so important for human beings. That's why education is only done for human beings. Animals don't need education. So this inner harmony is the key for outer harmony. We sometimes feel it is the other way around. If everything outside is good, then I'll be good. It's not that way. Even if everything is good outside, there is a rock party going on, and you are sad. So what is unhappiness is that you are unresolved. You are, trying to solve some situation which you are unable to understand. Why, that guy behaved with me like that. So the important part is the inner harmony, the inner clarity. this issues which unresolved issues are the problem with you, with everyone or anyone, which makes them happy or unhappy. Because human beings are not creatures of circumstances. Human beings are supposed to be creator of circumstances. We should be in a position where we can create the circumstances rather than feeling victim of the circumstances that, circumstances are such so that I am feeling unhappy. Inner harmony versus inner conflict. Now, what happens in a human being? I think this might have been discussed in the session by other eminent faculty members. There are 5 faculties within us. There's a hope, there's a faculty which hopes, there's a faculty which reasons out thing, which puts logic to it, like whatever I'm saying. Almost every one of you would be comparing whether this is making sense or not. That's the reasoning. We all do reasoning. Then we have desire. Desire is at a higher pedestal than logic. Like you want to be happy, there's no logic about it. This is given. I want to live with harmony with myself. Then the third thing is understanding of things. So you reason it out, you found it acceptable, then it becomes a desire to live like that. When you start living and you find that it brings the desirable results, that gets converted to your understanding. And the result you experience harmony, you experience bliss. And that's how the whole mechanism of the self, works. Like there is a mechanism of body that when you eat some food, it in the mouth it meets with this digestive juices, and in the intestine it gets absorbed. Similarly, when you listen a new idea, you reason it out, and if it is in logic, it makes sense, then you want to live with that's desire, and then you live it, and then you understand, it becomes clear to you, and you experience something. So this is the working of the self. So these are these 5 faculties in us. In Hindi we have some man, vritti, chit, buddhi, and atma. That's the known words for these activities which is happening within the self. And within them there is a conflict. Like we all want satisfaction or contentment, but at the same time we want growth, and we ourselves feel, our logic says that if I'll get contented, then how will I grow? So there comes a conflict. So what is happening? There is a conflict between the logic faculty and the desire faculty. And that's, if you look at it, there are so many of conflicting thoughts within the self, which are in conflict with desire, which are conflict with our own knowledge or our understanding, or our what I hope does not meet desire, or with our thought. Like I want to become billionaire, for example. Someone wants to become millionaire overnight, and the same thought says no, this is not right. Or someone is polluting industry, so he doesn't want to pollute, but at the same time he feels pressure that if I have to earn money, then I have to do it. So there's an inner conflict. So the inner conflict is within the self, within these 5 faculties. Then what is the meaning of peacefulness? So I was saying inner conflict is unhappiness for the human being. Peace is at the level of family. Many people found to have a peace of mind. That doesn't happen at the individual level alone. So at the level of family, when all the family members are with inner harmony, and you feel prosperity, which has already been discussed, that not only having enough material physically, but mentally, the whole family feels that yes, they have got enough to meet their needs, and that is manifested by supporting others, those who need help from us, whether it is monetary or whether it is they need your time, because finally if you feel you have earned enough, then only you can engage these man vritti or chit, or your thoughts for the service of others. And so peace is basically that all these family members are with inner harmony, and as a family you feel prosperous, living with values, with mutual trust, respect, affection, care, gratitude, love. This is what brings peace. Because these words quite look synonymous, and we fail to differentiate between them. What is contentment? Contentment comes at the level of society. And someone will say, I was thinking I will get contentment myself. But the manifestation happens at the level of society, because contentment means you feel quite sure that your kids will be taken care of. Okay, your future, you are not worried about your future. Your future will be taken care of. And so thus, unless you have a just society, a trustworthy society, when you go to a hospital, if you have, say for example, any disease, you will not be cheated by a doctor. If you have that in mind, you cannot feel contented. So content comes at the level of society, where education, healthcare, participation, production is ensured for all. And you feel that yes, all families are prosperous in society. Then that's what brings contentment. And the final word, when we say happiness contains all these four dimensions, what is bliss? Along with our balance in nature, when there's ecological balance, when the environment is free of pollution, when there's a population balance, we are not having, less resources and there's more people. And that balance, if happens in the nature and in the human beings, with all this together is what is manifested as bliss. I'll pause for a while here and ask Yogesh Bhai before I take the second part of this, which is existence as coexistence, or harmony in nature and existence. Yogesh Bhai, are there any comments?
There are few questions I will read. Okay. How to change the thinking of people to follow rules and regulations?
Can you speak it again a bit louder?
How to change the thinking of people to follow rules and regulations?
How to
change the thinking?
Okay. So if we want that how people will follow rules and regulation, that is only teaching is not going to be sufficient, as I said, by taking example of Singapore or India. Okay, or even you say I am in Surat. So the kind of chaos I see on the road of Surat versus the kind of good traffic which I see in, say, example, in Delhi or Bombay. What is the difference? The same being taught, the same books are being taught in CBSE syllabus in all the places in India, more or less, or as I said, in Singapore. So what is defining? People follow rules and regulations not by through teachings alone. Teaching is important, by the way. Without teaching, it will not work out. So that's why they have to teach it in Singapore and US also, and Europe also. So teaching is important, but more important, or I would say plus along with that has to happen a matching behavior in the society following that teaching. So if I say to, this is a very common question which comes, quite often parents tell their students, that you should take care of elders. Look how much I have done for you while you were young. I could not sleep while you were sick, for 3 nights. Or some such examples we give to motivate our kids that they should take care of elders. But if in the society they see that we are not taking care of our parents, we are not full of gratitude towards them, and they see that old people are not being taken care, they are going to old age homes, or we don't have that kind of respect, gratitude towards them, then they are not going to manifest. I mean, in general, and exceptions are always there, but as a rule, or that everyone is going to take care of their elders, that's not going to happen. So what I'm saying is, for teaching and supported by that matching behavior by the society at large is the only way to ensure that the new generation will follow the rules. So how to begin then? It's not a chicken and egg situation. We elders has to make a beginning. So we elders should start living with those rules, with love and affection in the relationships, and kids will follow. Okay, so the new generation will follow. And why should we do that? Not for next generation to teach them. It is because we will feel happiness, we'll feel bliss, we feel contented by following such rules. So the rules are not to be followed because there are rules. These are to be followed because that gives us harmony in the society. And since we need harmony, we need order. This is our own desire. And that's why we are supposed to be following those rules. In fact, we are not following rules. That's why we are in trouble. We are unhappy. We have created pollution. We have created bar. We are, amassing a lot of, warfare, uh, arms and armaments, and that's what the conflict is. So, and why we will follow once we realize, and so that's why we have to do an introspection. It's not that I am saying it or someone is saying it, so you are going to follow it. You listen to the new information, reason it out, and if you find it makes sense, try it out for a while. And if you feel peace of mind, if you feel contented, if you feel bliss, if you feel happy about it, and that's how the beginning will be made. And then from individuals will become such families, and from families will become society. Yes, Yogesh bhai, this is it. Any other question?
Yes, one question. It might be interesting. Why different definitions? Why dictionary definitions are different from the ones taught yesterday?
Which definition is different?
Why dictionary definitions are different from the ones which were taught yesterday?
Can you sort of text that? I don't know why I'm not. Voice is not very clear. So can you, in the chat, can you write that question?
Yeah, I'm sending by chat.
Yeah, please. Looks like my mic not good. Good. Why dictionary definitions are different from the ones taught? Excellent. Now, if you look at, this is a new philosophy. Okay, and dictionary definitions are normally definitions which are prevalent in the society. Okay, like for example, I will go through some of the questions which we have posed in the last FDP since we have raised this question. Here, these definitions are existential. Okay, these are not talking of prevalent definitions. For example, love. Such a misused word nowadays. Someone asked me in the last workshop, sir, I want to love, but the society does not want, does not allow people to love. I said, we need to differentiate between love and lust. Okay, so society is never going to stop people from, because love means caring, considering the other person as the way you are, having, affection to others. So who is going to stop? But then the dictionary meaning of love has got reduced to a physical manifestation of lust. So or maybe in dictionary you will find both. So here these definitions are more existential. Okay, they are coming from the way the existence is, and that's why you will feel much more related with them. Because happiness Normally, if you look at in the dictionary, it is akin to sensual pleasures, okay, which are transient in nature. While here, since it's based on a philosophy, and the person, the guy who has written that philosophy, he also realized the limitation of words. So rather than choosing different words, he used the same words but then defined them so that you and me, while reading it, do not take out the same meaning out of it. Yeah, that's why dictionary definitions are different from the ones taught yesterday or today, which we are, talking about, is different because these are more existential, and this is a proposal. So we are not saying you consider this definition as the right definition. You please do verify at your own end, because this is not a prescriptive design. This is a proposal based design. Yeah. Okay, Yogesh bhai, any other question?
No, sir. Please continue.
Okay. So I'll go to the next part and share the sharing here, and we'll share the next topic of today. Okay, so understanding harmony in nature and existence. Yeah. Now this is earlier there were a lot of questions on this, anonymous questions, but I would, if time will permit, then I'll take them. So I'll go through right now on the cover up the part. So look at the existence of nature. There are 4 orders in nature. This must have been covered, I'm sure. There is a physical order, plant order, animal order, and human order. I'm sure the Yogesh bhai, this must have been covered.
Yes, slightly.
Okay. So
Yes.
harmony in nature, you see there's a symbiotic relationship between the physical order, plants, and animal. There is no conflict amongst them, except when the human beings comes onto the play. It looks like as if on this planet human being is like a villain, you know. At the same time, we know that human being is the most evolved species on the planet. We are evolved than the animals, we are evolved than plant order, we are evolved than material world. And someone sometimes do ask, how come you can say that, we are more evolved? And this is, if we put some observation here, it becomes very evident that we are more evolved because we have all the characteristics which are found in these 3 orders, but we have certain characteristics which are not found there, like thought, like freedom of action, okay, like imagination power. So we have very evolved imagination power, a small amount of it that we can see in animals. So that way we are a 4th order altogether. So we are evolved. Another example we can observation through which we can see that we are more evolved species is that it never happens that an animal like a lion or an elephant have domesticated a few human beings, but it is always other way around. A human being has been able to domesticate or train animals. So that way our potential is quite visible. We are the most evolved species on this planet. However, evolved true evolution is manifested in the form of nurturing, not in the form of exploitation. So, like for example, if you feel that there are some teachers or some people are more evolved than you in the society, what do you expect from them? Do you expect that they would be exploiting you, or you expect them that they would be nurturing you? So obviously, the more evolved person, our normal expectation is that the evolved person would be nurturing you. So that potential we have, we can nurture the animal world, we can nurture the plants, we can create a imbalance as well as balance. And so we have yet to manifest our true potential into the nature. And that's what is the by and that's why you need education. If we look at that through education, you realize that there is a symbiotic relationship. And good thing is that human being also wants to be in harmony with all these three. In fact, not being in harmony with these three and within themselves, that is the sole cause of problem. So with this, if we realize that we have to yet to manifest our full potential. So if you look at the whole planet Earth, we are in the journey of evolution. Human beings are evolving. They are still evolving to come to a situation where they can have a symbiotic relationship, a coexistence with all other orders as well as with themselves. And that's what is so this you have already seen that first three orders are in mutual harmony with each other and exist in mutually enriching relationship. Human beings also desire to live in mutually enriching relationship with each other and with nature. In human beings, it comes through knowledge. Now, all these three orders are in mutually enriching relationship by default, by design. And the design for human beings is that they come into this symbiotic relationship through knowledge. That's why education is so fundamental for human beings. It's paramount, and that's why teachers, they say we have such kind of, in the society where Kabir is saying कि गुरु गोविंद दाऊ तो खड़े काके लागों पाए और बलिहारी गुरु आपने गोविंद दिया बताए. The status of teacher or a guru is on the topmost pedestal because he is the one who is passing on the knowledge to the next generation. So you people, I salute teachers. They are the backbone of the society, of the future. They are going to shape the future. So you are in that role, and that's why through knowledge we can create a harmonious human beings, harmonious families, and harmonious society. So harmony is natural in the nature, and that's why I say harmony is the way to go. If we can see that, if we can teach that, and if we can not only teach but we can practice that, as someone has asked the question, then we can see that a new paradigm, a new way of systems will evolve, and that is what we will feel proud of ourselves. We will be able to respect our own contribution. That yes, we have made the kind of contribution we wanted, and we have been able to give guidance or the direction to the society. That is what is expected. That's why I say power of knowledge. Another important part when I say power of knowledge, that we do not make mistakes knowingly. Quite often we have this. Many teachers tell me, sir, हम तो सब पढ़ा दिया, उसके बाद भी गलती करते हैं लोग. Information is not knowledge. Knowledgeable person cannot make mistake, because if we feel that even after knowingly people can mistake, then what are we doing in education institutes? Because if we educate and the educated one will make mistakes, then what is the sole purpose of education? So when we mistake education as information, then there's a problem. education is not merely passing on information, because that's there in Google, and that's what is happening in the new generation. The teachers are only passing on information, and they say, "Sir, Google knows much more than what you are telling me." So there's a gap between information and knowledge. Knowledge is information gets filtered through logic, as we discussed those, manvritti, those faculties in us. So while we are educating, we are not supposed to only pass on information, but to through our living, and then through logical reasoning, and through our, asking them to make some practices as per that knowledge, where it can become their own, and then it's not possible to make mistake. If we can make students know what is right, what is wrong, they will not make mistake, and that is the basic premise of education. Similarly, we have funny kind of dilemma. Quite often we say, to err is human. To, however, in reality, to err is not human. It is inhuman to make mistakes, and that's why whenever someone makes mistakes, whenever, if I ask you a question, whenever you make mistake and you come to know that you have made a mistake, how do you feel? Do you feel good about it? And the answer is you feel bad about it. If you feel bad about it, it means to err is not human, because otherwise you should have felt very happy. You should have said, wow, I have made 3 mistakes today, tomorrow I'll make 10, because to err is human. But that's not the case. We don't want to make mistakes again and again, because to err is not human. We want to do the right things, not to err, not to make mistakes. Similarly, to be angry is not human. Quite often people say, because if you do survey, you will find that 99% are making mistakes, are getting angry at one point or other. Does it mean it is natural to human beings? No, because whenever you get angry or someone gets angry on you, you want to avoid that. So to be angry is not natural for us. Okay, it is. So it's not our nature, because nature means something that you feel good about. While whenever you get angry, you want to run away from that. You don't want to be with that. Otherwise, you would have said, okay, good, today I have been 10 minutes angry, tomorrow I'll increase that timing. That's not correct. So in fact, to be helpful is human. To live in harmony is human. To support each other is human, not other way around. To be greedy is not human. We are teaching, in fact, sometimes I feel we are teaching wrongly in our institutes, and I remember, you might have read that, or you might have taught such, or where people are teaching that there was a, sometime there was a competition between sun and the wind. Okay, and the competition, they put a condition that who can get, a traveler to remove their clothes. And so sun got magnanimous and told the wind, okay, you try first. And as the wind started blowing hard and hard, the traveler started wrapping the clothes around him rather than removing it. And when the turn came of the sun started shining brighter and brighter, and then there was a lot of sweating, and so the traveler started removing his shirt. So, and then the moral of the story was that the sun is much more powerful than the wind. However, in reality, you don't see that they are fighting with each other. Sun and wind are not fighting with each other. They are complementary to each other. So we are putting our competition, thought of our competition into the mind, into these stories. Nature doesn't compete; it's only cooperate. So there is a cooperation. There is a coexistence in nature. It is human beings by mistake has, put our competition into in these stories. And that's why I was saying, that we, in fact, one more mistake which I see, when we teach what is the opposite of day, and we say night is the opposite of day. However, these are not opposites to each other. They are days and night are complementary to each other. Husband is not opposite to a wife. We are complementary. And by mistake, we keep on teaching men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Are they not from the same planet Earth? So, because we fail to live in harmony with each other, we have, justified it by saying that we belong to different planets. So what I'm saying is, and that's how power of knowledge is very important. Without analyzing these, we simply pass it on like an information. And another important part of knowledge is that knowledge is not only for discussion. Knowledge is to live in harmony and create an environment where others can live in harmony. I'm sure it is going to be 13:30, so I'll stop there in another 2-3 minutes. Isn't it, Yogesh bhai? Up to 13:30, we need to continue.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I'll wrap up. Knowledge is to live in harmony and create an environment where others can live. Knowledge even purpose remain happy. And another important characteristic of a knowledgeable person is that he remains happy. Quite often I hear in the society, people say that those who are knowledgeable, they are more, unhappy. Educated person becomes unhappy. But that's not true. How can that be? So the another defining characteristic of a knowledgeable person is that he remains happy. He is source of happiness for others. He has all the answers of why and how. Okay. So that is what is the meaning of knowledge, power of education. Existence is coexistence. There is a complementariness in nature. There is symbiotic relationship. Human beings are evolving towards that. The proof of evolved one is lies not in exploiting the less evolved, but to nurture and have sustainable development, to establish eco-balance, social balance through happiness and prosperity of all for all and for all times to come. And that's what is the role you teachers, the society has empowered. Thank you